Hey everybody, welcome back to another DRG episode. Today we are going to be focusing on the Driller. Specifically, we're going to be looking at a Flamethrower build and an EPC build. This build is pretty defense focused and has a lot of slowing and AoE and dot damage involved with it. This is a great build for just about anybody. This is really good for carrying. For instance, if you are the best player among your group and you're playing Driller and your teammates are new, this is a really great way to protect your team. Combination of OCs here that I'm talking about, so that you'll understand what I'm saying, is a sticky flame build with either the sticky fuel OC or the sticky additive is preferable. You could run lighter tanks, fuel stream diffuser, or compact feed valves. This build doesn't really necessarily work with a face melter build, but you could still run it if that's really what you want. The EPC is what's really interesting about this build. A lot of my feelings on sticky fuels and things like that have been talked about in a earlier and in my first DRG video actually, but I do have some different feelings on it now, just slightly. So I'll update the discussion a little bit. So this will be the shorter part of the video. Let's go with the Flamethrower OC real quick and just kind of explain how it works and what the build will look like. So let's go over the overclock for the crisper. And we're going to be talking mainly, I use sticky fuel. You can also use sticky additive for the sticky flame kind of defensive build. I prefer sticky flame builds when I play the Flamethrower build personally. Face melter builds are fine. Lighter tanks, fuel stream diffuser, and compact feed valves are all fine. They are just not exactly not the best build, I guess I should say, for this build that I'm talking about. So with sticky fuel, which is the unstable overclock, it is a +5 sticky flames damage, +6 sticky flames duration, -25 tank size, and -75 max fuel. For sticky additive, you get 1 damage per particle and +1 sticky flame duration. But both of those are really good for this build, because in this build is mainly building around the third modification tier with the sticky flame slowdown, which increases your sticky flame slow from 10% to 55%. So the basis of this build is kind of based around the sticky flame slowdown. You could go with face melter and still run this. It just isn't as good because I believe face melter's sticky flame duration is only like a couple of seconds. With face melter having only 2 seconds on its sticky flame duration at base, it's really not great to do this. But if this is all you have or you just really like this, then you could really run this build together and it could work. It's just a slightly different variation. Of course, you don't have to run exactly what I'm running here. So the reason I usually use sticky fuel is because it's the easiest way to get very high sticky flame durations without having to sacrifice too much in your build. If you only select one of these sticky flame durations in the modifications, then you're at 11 seconds. That's really as much as I need. Some people may prefer to go with 14, and some may even argue that 8 is perfectly fine. That's really up to you, and we'll talk about that as we get into the build. I'm going to change it up with how I do this a little bit. I'm going to kind of announce the builds first that I want to talk about. So displayed on the left is the main build that I normally ran, which was high pressure ejector, sticky flame duration, sticky flame slowdown, more fuel and heat radiance. And with this build, you get the 15 meters flame reach, which is really nice and gives you a lot of space to help your teammates. If this is the carry kind of build, then this is really good. The problem with it is that you only have a 25 tank size, so you'll be reloading often. This is potentially a build that you'd want to run Born Ready on, just to mention that at the start. If you're running this tier of 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, then Born Ready is probably advisable. With 15 meters, you get a lot of defensive utility with that. Going with the sticky flame duration in tier 2 gives you 11 seconds on your duration, which is a long time. So with that extra reach and the third tier of the sticky flame slowdown, all that reach is allowing you to protect your team from waves from much further away. In the fourth tier is where you can kind of get a little bit different with that one if you want. The more fuel is really nice because it puts you at 300 max fuel, which is a really good amount. It's not an amazing deal, so you could go with the longer sticky flame duration and just use your sticky flames more sparingly. Totally could work. If you really like to bunker, then maybe going all sticky flames is really good for you as well. It burns not as good for this kind of build because this really isn't a direct damage build. And then heat radiance or targets explode. Target explode also isn't that great because it's also a direct fire build. You could run this if you're using this to shoot at people every now and then, but I think that that would probably be better for my second one that I'm going to talk about. Heat Radiance is after every full second of firing, deal 80 fire element area damage and 80 heat in a 3-meter radius around you. The heat per second stacks with a direct stream and sticky flames heat sources as well. This is just kind of better all around. Even if you shoot just every now and then, this is going to work a little bit better for you than targets explode most likely would, since you're not really directly shooting at things that often. You're most likely going to be directly shooting at things like Macteras potentially, but your EPC can help you out with that a lot. A second build that you could run right here on the right is a high capacity tank build. So you're sacrificing the 5 meters of reach, which gets you up to 50 tank size though. So this gives you a little bit more leeway to actually shoot at grunts and stuff if you don't want to just focus on making lines in the ground with your sticky flames and such. The sticky flame duration in the second tier is also up for grabs in this. You could go with unfiltered fuel as well with this, so either unfiltered fuel or sticky flame duration is good for this kind of build, since you can get away with shooting things a little bit more often. Shooting things directly with a sticky fuel build is not as great, so if you have sticky additive, then it's kind of good to do that, so that's kind of up to you on that one. The third tier, I think sticky flame slowdown is key to this build that I'm talking about in particular, so you definitely want to keep that one regardless. In the fourth tier, more fuel is potentially up for grabs as well. You could go with sticky flame duration here if you didn't in the second tier, or it burns, or even more fuel. It burns is okay because you will be shooting enemies more often with high capacity tanks, but you really won't have very much ammo either. If you're running sticky additive, maybe it works a little bit better because you're not sacrificing as much ammo, but sticky fuel, I would probably stick with either sticky flame duration or more fuel if you can. In the high capacity tanks build, you could go target explode because you're more likely to shoot enemies. So if you're running sticky additive, targets explode is probably a good one. That works as well with compact feed valves, fuel stream diffusers, and lighter tanks. Sticky fuel, I wouldn't really want to go targets explode as much, but you could. It still works. It just, you're going to be reloading a lot, and you're probably not going to like it as much. Because you only have so little ammo to use. It can work though, so if you think it's good for you, then totally do it. Heat Radiance is a little less noticeable and flashy than when you see a targets explode thing work. So up to you on that one. Let's talk really quick about how exactly the sticky fuel kind of playstyle works, just so you understand it really quickly. This kind of playstyle, you don't really have to be very mobile. With an 11-second or even 8-second sticky flame time, you are able just to make lines very far ahead of you. You can make, it depends on how you want to do it. If you're in a tunnel, you just circle the entire tunnel, which blocks off any exit for the bugs, because the bugs will often try to go around your flames if they can. So that most of the time you're gonna have to make an entire encirclement around the tunnel you're in, or if you're in a hallway, you're gonna have to put it up the walls a little bit so they don't try to go around you in some way like that. Usually with the 11-second time frame and the sticky flame slowdown, you don't have to do the 1 or 2 or 3 lines back and forth. Sometimes just doing a windy, like snake-like pattern is also okay. You don't have to stop shooting as much. This helps you save a lot of fuel, and then you can kite them or make them follow you around the flames, and they'll just keep running through it over and over again, saving you ammo. And you could run Vampire with this, and while they're running through flames, you could power attack them, get health back. It's a pretty decent build. So that's generally how you would use that. If you're bunkering, then of course you will just, you know, shoot the flames in the entrance as they're coming through. This also works really great on bulks and anything like that. Doesn't really work great with dreadnoughts, but that's okay. This build isn't really great for dreadnoughts. I would definitely suggest running a freezing build for dreadnoughts if I was going to choose anything. You can do a lot of fun things with this. You can shoot at the ground under you as you're running if you're being chased, and that way you don't have to turn around and shoot anything. The flames don't hurt you once they're on the ground or your teammates. You can, however, shoot your teammates with your flamethrower and hurt them, but once the flames are on the ground, it no longer hurts you or your teammates. I'm pretty sure of that. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty certain that it does not hurt you once it's on the ground. Teammates of drillers, if you are playing a scout or a minigun gunner, or I guess really an NG, and you see a swarm of little swarmers or things like that, you can just run behind the driller and they'll save you most of the time, and you won't have to use as much ammo. This build especially is very great for any kind of defensive mission. So point extractions, refineries, anything where large waves are going to come at you. Escorts, this is very good for escorts. Not amazing for the ending part with the rocks, but every other part of the mission is very good for that. Luckily, you won't be the only one shooting at rocks with this build. so that'll be great. This wouldn't be a great solo escort mission unless you can survive the second part. If you can survive the second tier with the rocks, then this is totally viable for solos. This is actually a pretty decent solo build, as long as you don't get hit by a bunch of Mactera swarms or stuff like that. All right, now onto the EPC. This is an EPC charge shot build, and it's going to be using the persistent plasma overclock. Now, normally the EPC is very popular to run a thin containment field mining build, and you would normally run energy rerouting, magnetic cooling unit, or the old way was with heat pipe. This, I planned on doing this without using thin containment field, until I accidentally chose it in a game, and I realized that it is still good with this one in a lot of different ways. So since this is mainly a charge shot build, with the modifications, as you can see on the screen here, I have higher charge plasma energy, which is the third slot in the first tier, which gives you plus 15 charge shot direct damage and plus 15 charge shot area damage. So whenever the charge shot hits anything, it does, with just this one selected, it does 60 direct and 60 area. So about 120 damage straight on when it hits something is how I believe that works. So the thing that it hits directly does 60, and then when it does area, it does 60 more. We'll probably talk about persistent plasma and what it does exactly. It is an unstable overclock, and what it does is, upon impact, charge shots leave behind a 3-meter radius field of persistent plasma that deals 35.5556 fire damage per second and slows enemies by 20% for 7.6 seconds. Minus 15 charge shot direct damage and minus 15 charge shot area damage. So it's really, really nice. If you heard that and you heard the slow and the dot, what you'll be doing with this build a lot of the time is throwing down your sticky flames, which if you did the 25 tank size, this really builds well off the 25 tank size, because you'll use your full tank of the flamethrowers, and then you'll be able to switch over to your EPC and use your charge shots to add to the slow, and then not only add to the slow, but kill everything else in the wave. This is also very good for shooting things from a distance and creating a slow wave that's also a dot from very far away. So you could kill things that are on a wall or something like that, or if you see something spawning from underground, you could just shoot this at it from a distance, and it'll hurt it for quite some time. It's pretty good at slowing. This kind of turns you into a similar to like an electric build that you can shoot from anywhere and slow anything from a distance. So really, the persistent plasma slow and the sticky flame slow added together or multiplied together, however the frick it works, adds to make a very good slow. So things that are in the double fields of the slow fields from persistent plasma and the sticky flames are essentially stunned. They're very, very slow. It's almost like being electrocuted in a lot of ways. Yes, you have to do a little bit more than some things do, but you're also able to do it over a much wider area than a lot of builds are able to do, because you can shoot with the 15-meter reach your flames almost anywhere, and then you can shoot your plasma shot essentially anywhere. And this is without talking about the containment field in last modification tier as well. So the first tier, you could take with the build I have on the screen now, which is a 3-1-2-3-2. This build does 75 direct and 75 area whenever you just hit the normal charge shot, which will kill most regular grunts and such just on the hit. And then the plasma effect afterwards will kill the other things as long as they're able to stay in the field for a couple seconds. So pretty much, if anything's in a fire field, this will instantly kill most things, and if it's anything larger like a grunt guard or a praetorian, then this build will kill them slowly, but they're also going to be stuck, so they're going to die in there being slowed. This is really good for teammates that are running any kind of high damage build. This will allow them to be stuck in there and just take a bunch of damage. You want the heat shield in the second tier, mainly because there's no point to do the regular shot velocity. You could, however, do that if you're wanting to do the thin containment field thing in the last tier more often. Then that's an idea you could do. I like to do the heat per second when fully charged, just so I don't overheat as often. In the second tier, the charge speed, I choose to do that just in case of Macteras. And so you will need the greatly increased in charge speed, which is times 2.5, so it's quite a bit to deal with them in a lot of ways. You could go the -2 ammo per charge shot. The 50% cooling rate is unnecessary if you go the heat shield, because you won't overheat as often. Don't use this as a normal shot build as much. I would mainly just choose to do charge shots with this. If you're using Born Ready, using a couple of charge shots will give you enough time to switch over to your flamethrower and it will be reloaded for you. as well. In the 4th tier, you could run any of them. I'm not 100% sure if the expanded plasma splash affects the persistent plasma wave, as does it increase to a 4-meter radius field, or does it just do the charge splash of the regular base part of the explosion? If it works for both, then that's probably pretty good. That makes it pretty good. The reactive shockwave makes it pretty good because it does more base damage, which allows you to kill this allows you to kill grunts and such with just the charge shot, which is nice. Could go the high density battery as well. Anything in the 4th tier is actually viable. In the 5th tier, we're not doing a flying nightmare build. Maybe I will try one of those soon. It seems to be not very good, even though they've attempted to buff it. I will keep trying to find a way to make it good, but I think it's mainly only good with frozen builds. So I'll have to try that out in a new build eventually. We'll try it out eventually. We'll see what we can pull off. Maybe a weird snowball and flying nightmare build or something funny like that. We'll try something. So when I was first running this build, I was running plasma burn because I assumed that that would be a good combination. It still is a good combination. What plasma burn does is its regular shots also do 5 plus 25% of their direct damage, heat per shot, which can ignite enemies, dealing 15 fire damage per shot. It's a good thing. This actually is a good part of the build, and you can totally do this, and it gives you some normal shot ability, which can be nice every now and then, and gives you a little bit of damage on that. So it's fine. It's okay. But then I accidentally used the thin containment field, and I realized it is super, super good with this build as well. Not only can you use mining with it every now and then, or you can make it more effective on point extraction missions and such. Escort missions as well, you could destroy for one, the rocks, but two, the lasers at the end. The thin containment field, shoot the charge shot with a regular shot before it impacts anything to make it detonate for 240 damage and carve terrain with a 3-meter radius. Additionally, it's times 0.8 heat per regular shot and times 0.8 heat per charge shot. So even if you do not use the thin containment field, it is probably the best thing to use in the last tier just because of the heat per shots. This allows you to not overheat nearly as often, which allows you to not take tweaked radiator in the 3rd tier. This is just all around good. However, if you use the charge shot, then not only are you doing the 240 from the explosion, but also the persistent plasma effect takes effect as well. So you'll create a field that does slowing and damage. So this part is very good for Macteras, or elite Macteras, and for anything like a Praetorian. This does a lot of damage, will peel their armor and set the persistent plasma effect into effect. Really interesting build, guys. This is a really cool build, and I'm glad that I tried some new things out. I assumed that thin containment with just the full mining build was definitely the best, but I think this persistent plasma build, even if you run plasma burn, it's still very, very top tier EPC build, I think. The Subaton needs a lot of buffing to make it as good as the EPC. It has some good builds along with it, but maybe we'll talk about that in another different video. So some things you can run with this. You can run in your grenades. You could run the poison grenades and go a full, somewhat defensive / dot build. And if you're going like really flamey, explodey, then that's good too, because then you can explode the plasma grenade with your flames and also your EPC as well. If you shoot your EPC charge shot into there, even if you don't shoot the thin containment field charge shot and you just shoot the charge shot into there, once it explodes, it does fire damage, so it will blow up your neurotoxin grenade. You could also run HE grenades. It works. It'd be fine for this as well. It would definitely kill things that are already in your flames and fields, so to make sure you're killing waves much faster. You could also use axes, and if you're using vampire, that's probably not a bad idea, because once things are in that slow field, you can just throw an axe randomly into there and get maybe 2 or 3 kills at a time sometimes, if it just works that way. So it's a great way to get a lot of health back, it's a great way to kill lots of things, and it gives you some Praetorian damage if you need that from your build. I would suggest not to tell your scout to not run cryo grenades with this build, as you will constantly mess each other up, or you will mess him up more likely than he'll mess you up. Running an IFG would be suggested, or even pheromones if you're doing that. This build goes great with any highly defensive engineer builds, any highly defensive gunner builds that rely on their zip lines a lot, gunner builds that rely very highly on miniguns to do large damage to big things would really take effect, like would really be helped by this build because they will be protected from the smalls. And of course, scouts will be protected from this as long as they hide behind you. But this gives them a lot of help too, because you can shoot your plasma towards things that are coming to gank them while they're mining and stuff like that, and it will help them greatly. So on the screen, I'm going to display the builds one last time. and you'll see, so you can easily see what we were talking about. And I hope that you guys try this build out and you just let me know how you like it. Next up, we're going to probably look at engineer builds that focus heavily on turret whip. We potentially will maybe put it together with my turret arc and turret discharge videos. Maybe we'll go all into one. The engineer turrets got super buffed in the last update, so an already strong class like the engineer getting super buffed as they were just makes them extremely powerful. So if you're an engineer fan, it's going to be a good one for turret builds. After that, I'm considering putting together, so let me know how you guys feel about this, but I see that there's a lot of issues that people don't know what kinds of team compositions to run during certain missions. For instance, dreadnought missions, like elimination missions, people not understanding how a point extraction mission works exactly and what you should be doing while you're doing it. An escort mission composition, it seems people run very poor things for that as well. And potential even refinery missions. Things like mining extraction and eggs can have a thing we can talk about, but not as big of a deal. Salvage missions could be a thing we could talk about as well, but that's mainly if you want to bunker or not. So, but mainly I want to talk about elimination missions, point extractions, and escorts. So if you guys have any want for something like that, then I can talk about a composition kind of video where I go over what each class should be running and just kind of a rundown of strategies to defeat the missions in the best way that I can find. Let me know how you like that. And once again, guys, we are almost to the hours watched for Partnered, which is awesome. We're very, very close to that. That's totally going to happen within the next month or so, which is fantastic. And we're still working on that subscriber part. So if you guys enjoy these videos, just then subscribe if you like and leave a like, comments. Let me know what you guys want to see next in DRG. And once again, thanks a lot. I hope to see you guys out there on Hoxies and Rock and Stone.